Have you ever felt like there's something more to life than what you're currently doing?
Do you see the world differently than everyone around you?
Do you ever dream of achieving big things but feel stuck? We're Tiffany and Sid, and we are the Cycle Breakers.
Not long ago, no one believed in us.
The people closest to me said I'd make a great receptionist.
And mine completely abandoned me and left my life.
We started our journey 5 years ago in a basement.
Now, we live our dream life in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. But how did we get here?
We saw a life that was much better than the one we were living.
And broke through the blocks that hold most people back.
Like self-sabotage, crippling self-doubt, and the fear of rejection. But we knew we were made for more, so we bet on ourselves to make the life that we wanted.
And jumped into a life dedicated to breaking old cycles and patterns.
And now we live on 97 acres in the Smoky Mountains. We travel the world speaking on stages, and we help a small army of people break their cycles as well.
We're the Cycle Breakers, and we break through blocks that are holding most people back so we can go live our dream life.
Welcome to the Cycle Breakers Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this episode of the Cycle Breakers Show. We are super excited for what we have in store for you today.
Hey-o!
I am Tiffany Toombs Clevinger, joined by my incredible husband, Sid Clevinger.
Hey-o!
Who's just going to apparently just yell for today's episode.
Bring the energy,
All right.
baby.
So today we are talking about what you need to do. There are 3 root causes to why you sabotage yourself.
Talking about self-sabotage.
We're going to talk about what you need to do to break out of self-sabotage, to turn that self-sabotage into success. So, you ready to hear the first reason that people
I'm ready to go
self-sabotage?
over self-sabotage because I feel like a lot of people, including me, when I first met you, was sabotaging myself leftwards, frontwards, backwards, leftwards, everywhere words. And I had no idea that I was self-sabotaging myself everywhere words. And thought that maybe it would be good to, I think, going over, because I know you went over this in the past, in some of the workshops and stuff you've done. But what would, what are some hidden signs of self-sabotage? I think, you helped me recognize, I used to self-sabotage myself based on, things that I would say every day. And for me, I was quote unquote joking around or trying to make friends or whatever. But, subconsciously I was self-sabotaging myself and putting a ceiling on what I could do or what was holding me back. And then I was just sort of blindly, as your hair flows in the wind, blindly just, self-sabotaging myself without even knowing. So my question really to you before we get into the signs would be, what is self-sabotage and how can people recognize that they're stuck in it? Because most people are just going to be in denial about it like I was. So what were some things that you recognized or are some hidden things that people, can recognize when they're under self-sabotage?
Yeah. So self-sabotage is really when we engage in a pattern, a behavior, use words that basically set us up for failure in terms of moving towards our goals. So it's something that it takes us out of momentum and out of alignment with the goals that we've said that we want to achieve. And so when we sabotage ourselves, we are likely at some point before we sabotage, we're moving towards our goals. And then the self-sabotage happens. It takes us off that path. So it puts us on a detour, puts us on the wrong road, kills our momentum and motivation.
For me, I always felt like I was getting caught in this loop. I was in this loop of I remember whatever situation it might be in, whether it was meeting women or it was trying to grow a business or honestly, in my story, trying to break free from the traumatic and toxic relationships that I just kept finding myself getting involved in. And I never really understood how I kept getting to that point of well, I know this is going to happen. It's all going to blow up, it's just a matter of timing. It's all going to blow up. And it was almost kind of this subconscious programming that I told myself in all these situations that I would get myself into, because life really is like a cycle, right? It's very cyclic. So like these relationships or these situations that I constantly was getting into, and a lot of times opportunities that I was getting, and I would sabotage myself, and I never really knew why. I never said it was self-sabotage. I just found myself getting caught in these like negative loops and spirals that like I couldn't get myself out of. And you know, I think what are you know, if someone's like listening to this right now and they're kind of like in that denial, what would you say is like something that they should look out for? Like, you know, are you self-sabotage, or I might be self-sabotaging myself, I don't know. Like what is something that you would say is like a whole how like you're self-sabotaging yourself, whether it's an emotion or it's like a sign of some kind, right? So like what do you think that would be? Because like you helped me through finding my signs, which, oh my gosh, there was a lot of them. But like, you know, you know, what would you say is some of the biggest signs that would kind of like help people recognize if they're, you know, it's not self-doubt, it's not imposter syndrome, it's not any of these other things, but like this is you sabotaging yourself and this is you keeping yourself stuck on purpose.
Yeah. So most people aren't doing it on purpose. And when we get into the root causes, it's all subconscious, right? So nobody's doing it on purpose. Um, Feelings would be like if you feel like you just keep spinning your wheels, or it's like no matter what I do, I end up in this same position again, or no matter how hard I work, I never move forward, then there's likely some self-sabotage going on. In fact, I would bet everything I own that there's self-sabotage going on.
Yeah.
If
A pattern I felt.
yeah. And then in terms of like what kinds of things are you going to see in your life, it's like you make a decision that you're going to do something different, or you know, you make a decision on the goal that you want, but the old patterns just keep coming back up, right? The old thought patterns. And then the other way that people sabotage themselves is they set a goal, they say they want some sort of success, and then they prepare for failure, right? Like it's like, well, maybe it's like I want to build a following on TikTok, but then it's like they spend all their time worrying about what people will think and what people will say, and will their videos even get any views? I talked about this in a coaching call earlier today. Like, you know, it's funny on TikTok, all these people are like, oh, my video only got 200 views. And I'm like, and yet if there was 200 people standing in front of you in an auditorium here to watch you talk or, you know, do whatever you do, you would be thrilled. So,
Would you tie it back to the you said it a couple of times there, would you tie it back to the quickness of taking action? So like if you feel stuck and not taking action, you know, just taking action, like regardless of like what's around you or the circumstances, do you feel like if someone gets stuck not taking action, they're in a self-sabotage state?
so not taking action is a self-sabotage state, but also sometimes taking action, like just do it, is not a long-term strategy for success
Sorry, Nike.
because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be taking the right action, right? Like there's a lot of people who are like, well, I did so much stuff today in my business. Like and we see it all the time when people start a coaching business, they'll spend all this time and energy and money on branding colors and headshots and logos and building out a website, but they don't have an audience. And then they're like, I'm going to launch my website or I'm going to launch my funnel, and, you know, people are just going to buy from me. And it's like, but you don't have an audience. So
we could
you
do a
know,
whole series of episodes on that last 10 seconds.
yeah. So, you know, sometimes taking action, there's a lot of people who will get stuck in like the busyness work, doing the busy work that doesn't actually move the needle. So taking action is not always necessarily a sign that you aren't sabotaging yourself either. And then, you know, it's like the thought patterns and what you say, like, well, I would like to build a following, but, or like, you know, saying that you're going to achieve something, but not really believing it's possible for you, or planning for the worst case scenario. Those are all, you know, setting you up to sabotage yourself.
Oh, so you say like setting up to sabotage yourself. Do you think there's two layers to it? Like the setup and the actual?
Well, I mean, if you don't believe, like you just finished the book and I'm reading it now, called The Game of Life. And there was a really powerful line in there that if you ask for success, but you plan for failure, you're going to get what you plan for. right? Which you prepare for. And so if I am preparing myself to fail, right? If I'm preparing myself that nobody's going to listen to this episode, then I'm also preparing myself to eventually take some sort of action that is going to sabotage my momentum and success. So again, all of this is happening at a very unconscious level. Nobody's sitting there going, how can I set myself up for failure tomorrow? Or how, it's happening at the unconscious level, but we want to be aware that, we just want to be aware that what we say and what we think is what precedes our actions and our habits. And so if we aren't paying attention to our thoughts, or we're just automatically assuming that our thoughts are telling us the truth, then we're going to, we're less likely to be aware of the ways that we're sabotaging ourselves.
It always happened to me. Like I would always get like, it was thoughts, yes, but like I would actually hear voices. I don't know, like if other people have ever had that, but it's like, yeah, you have your thoughts. You have your thoughts where you're like talking to yourself, like, where you could see the words. But then like for me, I actually started hearing the voices. Like, and what's interesting is like the voices, what is it like? It's like almost kind of like, the shame. I don't want to say shame, but it's almost kind of like the voices would usually be voices from the toxic people that I would have in my life, or the situations where things happened. And then I would develop a limiting belief. And then that limiting belief, when I would hear the voices, it rarely was my voice. It was usually someone else's voice telling me, I couldn't do something, or I can't, or you're not going to do, you know what I mean? Like it was like the negativity came from other voices. And I found it so easy to get sunk into that, because like it was almost kind of like I was living in that same situation over and over again, and I was never able to get out of it, which basically just, it owned me. And then that situation, or that toxic environment, or that person, or whatever, like got to a point to where they were owning me, because they were basically helping construct the self-sabotage that I was never able to get out of until I met you.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the case for most people. The thoughts that they have are not actually their own thoughts. They have come from somebody else. And we internalize other people's voices, whether it's things people have said to us or things people have said around us. So for example, I don't know that I have talked to a single woman ever who said that her mom had a good relationship with her body when she was growing up, right? They heard their moms talking about how they needed makeup to be pretty or to be beautiful. Or, that they were dieting. They're always dieting, or always talking about how fat they were. So there are very few women in the world who have ever had a female role model what it looks like to love their body. So that inner voice that then starts to tell ourselves like, oh, we're fat, or oh, we're ugly, or whatever it is, it doesn't always have to be something that was said to us. It can be a pattern that was modeled for us. And we just start to think like, oh, well, that's just what it means to be a woman, or that's just what it means to be a mom, is to, hate myself, or to not love my body, or to always need to be dieting, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So
No, yeah, I just thought it was, very important, because I think some people write off self-sabotage because they're almost kind of like at a conscious level. They're like, I would never do that. And I used to think like, oh, no, not me. I don't do that. But
and
then,
nobody's consciously doing it.
yeah, but then just to realize how much I was doing, like how it was literally like a part of my everyday life. And I think that is so important, because like, someone who is listening to the first part of this episode, and they're like, oh, I don't self-sabotage. That's not who I am. Well, I think a lot of people are self-sabotaging at some level. I feel like there's many levels to it, but I feel like a lot of people, I think it's a lot more than people realize. There's self-sabotaging happening all day, every day with so many people, and they don't ever realize it. But then it's like when you can break the cycle of like following that pattern of sabotaging yourself, things get a lot easier. So what's the first thing? Like I know you were ready to jump in like 8 minutes ago. What really is the the first part of, you're in this cycle, you can't get what you want, you feel like you're constantly hitting a wall. What's the first thing that we need to do to get out of self-sabotage?
Well, what we're actually talking about today is the root causes, because
Oh,
if you
okay.
don't, seeing the signs and symptoms is great, but that's like, oh, I have a cough, so I'm just going to take cough medicine, which again, a lot of people do. But when we understand that like our body is coughing, or our body has a fever for a certain reason when we're sick, then, we can take better actions to not sabotage the body. Like not.
Disclaimer, we are not doctors.
No, I know, but I mean, there's, if you're coughing, there's a reason your body is trying to remove something from your body. And so if we're just blindly like, oh, I'm
Making
just going
sure.
to take cough syrup,
Just making
I'm
sure.
just taking cough syrup, then, people might not realize that they are not working with their body in that case. So knowing the signs and symptoms that you are sabotaging does not mean that you figured out the root cause. So the root cause is what we want to go for, because that is going to tell us what actions we need to take to heal it. So the first piece is the first root cause of the three is that our belief systems are out of alignment with our belief systems are out of alignment with our goals. So our belief systems are coming from our subconscious mind, our unconscious mind, which is 96% of our mind's capacity. And the goals that we set for ourselves is coming from the conscious mind, which is only 4% of our mind's capacity. Mm-hmm. And so if I set a goal to make $1 million, but I believe that making money is hard, or I believe when I first started coaching, this woman came to me and she was making $99,999 a year. And she couldn't, no matter what she did, she could not make that dollar to tip her over the 6-figure mark. And so we started digging into it. And in her mind, everybody in her life that once they started making 6 figures, quote unquote, bad things started happening to them. So she created this belief system that if you make too much money, AKA over 6 figures, bad things would start to happen in your life. So she took herself as far up to the threshold as she could possibly go and then sabotaged the rest. So it didn't matter if she hit if she had a $90,000 month for the rest of the year, whatever that looked like, she would only allow herself to make $9,000, $9,999 more dollars. And then she would completely sabotage herself. And so, and sometimes it would be 98, 97, whatever, but she would get right to that mark and then sabotage. So if your belief systems don't align, we act and we perceive. So our belief system alter our perception of reality. So you have a perception of reality and I have a perception of reality. And we are filtering what comes in from the external world through the filters of our belief systems. So, and then what happens is we choose an environment. So we hang around with people who have the same belief systems and the same altered perception as us, because it creates this echo chambers of our belief systems. And then that impacts, and I'm going to give you an example in a second, that impacts the actions, the decisions we make, the actions that we take, and the results that we get. So back in college, I went through a nasty breakup and I developed this belief that all men were jerks. And so I started hanging around with other angry single women, right? A woman who believes that all men are jerks does not hang around with anybody who is in a healthy relationship, right? Or they'll have very few friends who do. And so, the angry women tend to hang out together. So I was this angry woman hanging out with a bunch of...
I'm so glad as a dude, I never had to worry about this. Jesus.
You did. There would have been people around you. They just wouldn't have hung out with you because they would have believed you were a jerk. So
no, I'm just talking about guys don't do this crap.
Guys have their own set of beliefs. You've had your own set of beliefs. Yeah. So anyways, I believed that, I hung out with other angry women, which meant so the decisions were either stay single or go on dates. But going on dates, I would have chose to friend zone the nice guys, which I friend zoned plenty of nice guys. Well, and I would have, I healed before I met you. If I had met you before I healed, you would have been in the friend zone. So I either, I'd friend zone the nice guy and date the jerks who just further gave me evidence that my belief system was correct, or I would just not date at all. And it was like one of those two extremes. There was no middle ground, which meant the results that I got were being alone and lonely or being heartbroken by another jerk because I ignored the red flags. So we need to align our belief systems with our goals if we truly want to have any measure of success. You can, and it doesn't matter how many people, how many business coaches tell you, oh, you don't need to work on your mindset. You can just push through and just more action. You will bump up against your limiting beliefs if you do not work on them.
I think I found that like happened a lot. Like it didn't matter like how much I pushed. Like it was almost kind of like what how do you say this? Like things are always going to happen. I think there's no magic. You're going to wake up one day and magically you're going to be in the right state of the mind, or you're magically going to have what you didn't have the day before or the week before. Like, I know I used to have these thoughts. I'll just wait till Monday, like, and I'll have the energy or I'll have, the belief, or, I'll be in a better mood or whatever. And what I found is like, what is, the old adage of like, storms are always going to come. So like one of the biggest things that we have to, recognize as human beings is to learn how to dance in the rain, because it's always going to be raining somehow, right? Like there's always going to, very few times is it not going to be raining. So I figured like, I think a lot of people get stuck with a lot of, I mean, I don't even care to say it. Like, I think mindset's so overused these days, and it's been so butchered and beaten up, like, and people like call mindset training that actually isn't mindset training. It's, motivational BS is what it is. And, like, I think people get stuck in this idea that, like they listen to this stuff and then they don't realize that, no matter how far, how hard, or like, what happens, like if we don't fix the root causes, those root causes are going to continue to come up, and they're going to continue to hurt us and continue to hold us back. And I think that's what's so important about like ripping apart the root causes.
Yeah. So that's the first root cause. And to overcome that one, we need to reprogram our limiting beliefs.
Yippers.
The next root cause is that our nervous system capacity is not at the capacity to achieve our goal. So our nervous system thrives on seeking the familiar, thrives on familiarity, because what is familiar is safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people find themselves repeating old patterns, going back to exes, dating the same type of person, doing the same negative habits and patterns with their money, for example, so spending all their money, or, making a lot of money one month and then not working the next month, whatever it is, it's because that is where you feel familiar. So everything in your life right now, the amount of money you have in your bank account, the friendships that you have, the relationships that you have, the weight that you are, the health that you have, that is where you feel safe, because that is what's familiar. Now, a lot of people grew up with chaotic childhoods in some form, right? They were bullied, there was fighting in the home, whether it was towards them or with their siblings or their parents, maybe moving around a lot, bad grades, whatever it is. But our nervous system really forms what is familiar and therefore safe in childhood. And so if you witnessed toxic relationship between your parents, then that's what became safe in terms of relationships. And until you expand your nervous system capacity, for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see I'm holding up this 34-ounce water tumbler, right? So let's say that this 34-ounce water tumbler, and those of you listening on a podcast,
you can imagine
you can imagine it.
They're really popular in the South.
So I think they're really popular everywhere. So you've got this 34-ounce tumbler, right? It can only hold 34 ounces. But what a lot of people do is they'll take like a gallon jug, which is 34-ounce, 4 of these tumblers, right? And they'll take this gallon jug that's full of water and they'll say, I'm going to pour this into this tumbler. And then they wonder why 3/4 of it ends up all over them, right? It makes this mess. People talk about quantum leaping or manifesting, but they don't align their nervous system with where they're going. Their nervous system doesn't have the capacity to hold that new level. And so it will end up in self-sabotage. You'll default and you'll slide right back to where you were. And so what we want to do is we want to stretch the nervous system to be able to hold more. Now, the first step of this is that we actually have to heal and regulate the nervous system, which is why we put together the 7-day nervous system reset. So if people want to get that, it's absolutely free. You can go to resetmysystem.com/reset. We'll also put that link in the show notes.
Easier, just go to the show notes while you're listening to this, or in the description on YouTube, and it's right there for you.
Yeah. So these are the 7 most powerful exercises to heal your nervous system and then to regulate you so that you can start stretching your capacity and what you are capable of doing in the future. So when we start to stretch our capacity, now we have more space. We know that nature abhors a vacuum. So then that's going to bring in the future stuff, right? What we're manifesting or what we desire. But also we now feel safe to be in new situations. We create a sense of familiarity with, say, making $10,000 a month or $20,000 a month before we get there. So that by the time we achieve that goal, now we feel safe. And now it's a new standard for us. So that's the second part, is that our nervous system is not at the capacity to be able to hold.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 3.
What's number 3?
Number 3 is that we are breaking a stress addiction. So the first 2 causes were subconscious survival patterns. The third is also a survival pattern, but it's, in this case, self-sabotage is actually a positive sign. So most people that I have ever met, I think the only person I've ever met who did not have an active stress addiction was Alex Sharfin, but we know, he had just worked on it before he came into my world, is that our body cells become addicted to getting higher levels of stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, than what it was designed to get. So basically it resets our emotional thermostat to feel like we always need stress, anxiety, overwhelm, overstimulation, fear, blah, 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 to feel normal, right? And when we go into this addiction, because adrenaline comes with a little bit of a high feeling, that's why people love jumping off buildings and things, is, they're called adrenaline junkies.
No, they don't. Not everybody likes jumping off buildings.
Adrenaline junkies do. And in the sports world,
adrenaline junkies.
I did. Adrenaline junkies in the sports world is like the sports world version of a stress addiction, but most people live this every day. So your body is used to getting high levels of stress because it's used to you having like negative thoughts and whatnot. Then you start making some sort of positive change. So you start making more money, you start promoting your business, you start, doing all sorts of, going to the gym, eating healthy, whatever it is. You start making positive change, and all of a sudden your stress hormone levels drop because you're not doing the same old patterns that promote the need and the hit for cortisol. And so your body cells literally attempt to hijack your mind to bring you back into that state of stress, into survival mode. Mm-hmm. And so what we want to make sure we are doing is, if we are making positive change and then ending up in self-sabotage, instead of just throwing the baby out with bathwater and assuming, oh, well, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing, or this is too hard, or whatever. I keep sabotaging myself. I'm broken. I'm the problem. We recognize that this is part of the process. Mm-hmm. Right. And there's 2 ways that our body is going to hijack us back into self-sabotage. The first way is that we get the ruminating thoughts, the worst case scenario thinking. In the future, you've just taken positive change, right? You've just signed up for a course, or you've hired a coach, you've launched your business, whatever it is. That worst case scenario thinking comes up. You're going to remind yourself, this is just part of my body attempting to hijack me. I'm breaking stress addiction here. I'm going to come back to the tools that Tiffany and Sid gave me in the 7-day nervous system reset. You're going to come back to the tools. The second way, after the first way, the worst case scenario thinking doesn't work. The second way the body is going to hijack you is, there's a part of your brain that measures how much of a specific hormone you had yesterday compared to today. And so when the levels drop, it will activate the system. So now you're going to start producing cortisol. Your heart's going to start to race. You're going to get sweaty palms. You're going to get the butterflies in your stomach. And again, what we tend to do is we say, something is not right. My body is responding. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling panicked. I need to find someone or something outside of me to blame this on. And what you're going to do instead is you're going to come back to the nervous system regulation tools, the nervous system reset, and remind yourself that this is part of breaking stress addiction.
Yippers. Yeah, I mean, I think, it's interesting because, like, isn't it, I know we talk about it a lot, but like everything kind of funnels themselves down to, like, if our nervous system, which ultimately is nothing more than the electronical circuit to the brain, I mean, it's like, we look at the trauma, we look at the pain, and whatever block that might be, whether it's self-sabotage, whether it's imposter syndrome, whether it's self-doubt, whether it's overwhelm, stress, addiction of any kind. I always find it interesting because, like, it's almost kind of like the nervous system tees up us being ready to heal, right? Or us being ready to break the cycle. And I think, like, many people just want to skip over that because they don't think there's a problem there. But, it's almost kind of like every single person that I meet, like, there's something there and it's mainly because it's consistency, right? Like, I don't think people realize that the nervous system isn't just like a switch, right? I mean, like, it's so, for me at least, like, it's so easy to get drawn back into the past blocks or past things that I've had. And coming back to resetting the nervous system, it almost puts me in that emotional state of mind that's kind of like, okay, you're back centered, you're back where you need to be, mentally, you're like, you got clarity, you got like awareness of like what's going on now, and you can make the right decisions on being able to, continue moving forward toward the things that you want, or manifestation that you want, or law of attraction, whatever you want to look at. Right. But regardless, like, we broke the cycles because we wanted to shift our identity. We wanted to become a new person. And the nervous system kind of like maintaining its regulation for me has always been very much the key, because it doesn't matter how much I try to brunt force it or break through a wall. If I don't have or use those tools, that wall is just going to spit me out and make me cry like a little baby.
Yeah. I mean, there's nobody that won't benefit from nervous system regulation. So to get the nervous system reset, like we said, it's absolutely free. Go to resetmysystem.com/reset, or you can look in the show notes. The link will be there for you. These are the tools that we start every single one of our private clients with: healing, breaking any cycle, becoming a better version of yourself, growing, scaling businesses. Like, literally any goal that you have is going to be a million times easier when you have the tools to regulate your nervous system. And the best part is you don't have to do all 7. I gave you a little bit of a variety so you can see which works for you. And they take less than 10 minutes a day. So that's like not even 1% of your day. And it can
like
dramatically.
It's like 6 or 7. I do the psychological side, I do 25 reps of those. So it's like 6 minutes.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I actually like feel a massive change after like 5 or 6 reps. So that's
yeah.
Like, yeah.
And it will dramatically change your life, just those tools alone. So make sure you get them. And if you like this episode, share it with somebody. If you know
share it with your friends who need it.
If you know somebody who is in self-sabotage, or maybe you got sent this podcast from somebody, they're just telling you that whether you see it or not,
about you. They care.
There's some self-sabotage going on. We will be back very soon for a new episode and with a new interview. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. See y'all soon.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Cycle Breakers, where this channel is all about helping people clear out the blocks that are holding them back. We have a free gift for you, and that free gift is called our 7-Day Nervous System Reset. The 7-Day Nervous System Reset is where we help you calibrate your nervous system so you can go out there and control your emotions and start to take more control of your life, helping clear the blocks that are holding you back so you can start stepping into that dream life. It's absolutely free, and you can grab it down here in the description. And remember, our friends, let's dare to heal.